Wokeness. It dominates the political discourse. From left to right, people can't stop arguing about it. But I'm here to argue that all this discussion about culture wars, about woke capitalism, about ESG are missing the point. Capitalism always wins. You see, the best way to win any competition is to play both sides. And capitalism does this expertly. You might think that boycotting a product, starting a massive marketing campaign against it, railing against the so-called perversion of our cultural values and the decline of masculinity is going to make an impact and stop these companies from the supposedly woke social programs they've decided to implement. But this misses the point. Wokeness was never about pushing a social agenda. It was about making money. How do I know this? Well, look how quickly companies are making a U-turn. Bud Light shifts from "we're supportive of trans rights, LGBTQ" to "freedom, America," in 2 seconds. What does this tell you? As much as you believe your campaigns will make an impact in the now, as long as these companies have the power over our cultural spaces that they do, there can always be a U-turn. Let's be honest, the right is losing its edge. Remember in the early 2000s and the mid 2000s when the debate was all about Dawkins and creationism and what these crazy religious people were saying, who were trying to burn books, attack people who insulted their scripture? The left was the counterculture, the atheistic, iconoclastic, cool guys, and on that basis, they started to build cultural relevance in online spheres. What happened? LGBTQ comes. Voices on the left start becoming much more socially restrictive, much more rigid in their approach. They stop being cool. And what happens? At the same time, Joe Rogan appears, pushing a very, very right-wing cultural narrative. Regardless of his own economic inclinations, the guy's all over the place. But he does kind of represent the sort of Nixon silent generation cultural conservatism of the US. Your average everyday man conservatism. And by championing that, by championing iconoclasm against the establishment, but in the form of anti-LGBTQ content, momentum shifted towards the right to a considerable extent. Like if we look at the content that is produced nowadays, if a few years ago, at least at the very least, gay rights was taken for granted. Now that's even controversial. The conversation has moved completely from these people being restrictive, trying to control people's pronouns, to burning books, losing the cultural ground. And do you not think when there starts to be a large-scale backlash against this, when people start to realize that the right anti-cultural movement has now turned towards book burning, suppression of any dissenting opinions, and old-school religious evangelical conservatism, that companies are going to see the wind is blown in that direction and reverse course completely? Because without large-scale societal change, without regulation, without an actual effort to tackle the monopoly power of these companies, they will still continue to dominate the cultural sphere. And if you really care, left or right, about the pervasive power of companies, then focus on restricting capitalism, or at least having a conversation about it, rather than small-scale, highly politicized battles against specific companies, like the whole DeSantis Disney case. DeSantis has been overwhelmingly pro-corporate. Like Florida is a great place for business. Attacking one company is just a political stunt. It's not going to solve the actual problem of corporate monopoly.